Everyday Heroes, now on Kickstarter.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first Everyday Heroes Kickstarter Designer Live Q&A. That is a mouthful. I am Noah, the community manager for Evil Genius Games. But let's get to the more important folks here, the people that are making this game for you. So we've got a special guest with us today. We've got Jeff Grubb. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey there, I'm Jeff Grubb. I was one of the original designers on D20 Modern almost 20 years ago. And since then, I've been doing a lot of work in tabletop role-playing games and computer role-playing games. And now I'm acting as sort of the design consultant on the new Everyday Heroes.
Awesome. And speaking of design consultants, we've got our lead designers here. Up on top there, we've got Sig. Sig, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Sig, or Siegfried Trent for my full name, but you can call me Sig. Most people do. And so I'm one of the two lead game designers on Everyday Heroes. I'm really passionate about the game. You'll have a hard time making me shut up. Jeff is a good friend and also kind of a game design hero of mine. And then there is my co-lead designer, the mighty Goober.
Hi, I'm Goober. I'm also real pumped for this. I've been making games for a long time, but this is one of my first sort of big games like this. Something that is just a full book with art and all kinds of cool stuff. So I'm real excited.
All right. So this is, just to get down to it, this is a Q&A. This is all about us answering the questions that you all have about Everyday Heroes. There's been such an outpour of support from the fans. We funded in 15 minutes. So again, thank you all for that overwhelming show of confidence in what we're doing here. But I know that there are a lot of spots and a lot of questions that we have from all of you. So I implore you, if you have a question about Everyday Heroes, about our Kickstarter, about our cinematic adventures, about our core rule book, now's the time to put them in chat, and we'll feed them to our designers, and we'll open up the world of this game that we've been working on for so long to all of you. Now, to get us started, I've gone ahead and gone through many of the different socials that we have, our Reddit, our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of that stuff, to find a bunch of questions that have already been asked so that we can ask them of our designers here to get the ball rolling. But again, if you have a question, now's the time. Please let us know. So, and also before we jump into this, I did want to give a shout out to Tommy Scott. Tommy Scott is a fan of Everyday Heroes that started the first fan page on Facebook, which was ridiculously exciting for me to see in the DMs. Just shout out to him. Thank you very much for doing that. But with that said, let's start to get into some of the questions here. The first question that I have is, will there be monsters included in the rule book? There weren't too many shown on the Kickstarter page. And so people are wondering, what kind of monsters can they expect to find? Are there going to be any in the rule book? And do we have a number for how many we can expect?
I can answer that. I'm sort of the resident stat block builder. There's going to be tons of like stat blocks in there. I think it's around like 150 or so stat blocks, and then a bunch of them have some variants. So like you'll have your gangster, but there's a variant for a bank robber who has some better weapons and such. So there's a whole array of like human NPCs that you could use in all kinds of different situations: criminals, law enforcement, military, security. There's some cultists. All kinds of like sort of basic NPCs. And a few weirder ones. There's a mad scientist and things like that. But there's also a whole section of monsters that are not just people. And for our core book, we're keeping it fairly simple. There aren't millions and millions of different crazy things, but we cover a pretty broad swath of the kinds of things you might need in a game. So there's some demons, there's some vampires, we got zombies, there's a few different types of aliens, and some sci-fi robots and stuff. And said cultists also have some magic options. So
okay, so I mean, Jeff, I kind of have to ask you, how did you all attack having monsters in the original D20 Modern?
The original D20 Modern was based out of the third edition of Dungeons and Dragons. And as a result, we basically wanted to make sure that it fit in so you could pull a monster out of the monster manual and bring it across. What we did when we approached it is we basically rethought of them in D20 Modern terms and figured out how they fit both, from a mechanical standpoint and also from a personal standpoint, as far as how it fits in with the society. We had, I believe at one point, an illustration of a mind flayer minister in the game itself. So basically, how did it fit in with the larger social? We had a couple worlds that we were proposing at the time, one in which magic is well known, one in which magic was in a shadow type operation, and one where it had no magic at all, but was psionics as the cool powers.
That's awesome. All right, we're getting some really good ones in chat, so I'm going to hold off on the ones that I've pulled, and we're going to start answering chat's questions directly. So we're going to start with Krill Holder, who asks, which cinematic adventure are you most excited about?
Sure. Well, I guess I can.
Yeah, go for it.
I can answer that first. For me, the one I'm most excited about, as kind of a rules engineer and designer, I would say Pacific Rim is the most exciting because I have not seen many treatments of the D20 system in any of its incarnations. I'm sure there have been, but I haven't read them, for doing giant robots and giant monsters and action beyond a human scale. Of course, there's some really big monsters in Dungeons and Dragons, but it's assumed you're fighting them with humans or something like them. So that's pretty exciting. I mean, it's a big game challenge, and I really get excited by big game challenges where you look at it and you go, man, how are you going to do that? And then I'm like, great, let's put the thinking cap on, grab a cup of tea, and figure it out, right? So I love that kind of a challenge. So that's probably kind of top of my list.
Oh, okay. How about the rest of you? You leaning any one way or the other?
I mean, for me, same deal with Pacific Rim. I'm really interested in how we can do it mechanically, but also I just absolutely love Pacific Rim. Like, it's so much my kind of a thing. I love a genre, and it leans so hard into its genre. And like drifting is such a cool thing. We got giant robots, but the plot is really all about connections between people. And like I feel like there's just so much to do with that in both like an adventure and the mechanics.
Awesome. Jeff, you got a particular favorite at all?
I got two, and I'm split between them. One is Skull Island because I love kaiju. I love the giant monsters. I think that's that got real potential there. And the other is Escape from New York because it's such a classic, and it's such this old school adventure. The dark future as imagined in the 70s, and it's really kind of cool. So
I just love that everybody always says, Snake Plissken, I thought you died. And for anybody that's curious, the answer for me is very obvious. It's Highlander all day, every day.
Okay.
All right, so that was Krill Holder's question. A great question. Thank you very much for asking it. Next, we've got Dradix 4262 who asked, "Are you going to put Everyday Heroes on Fantasy Grounds also?" This has been a very popular question that we've been receiving, specifically on our Kickstarter. So I'll let you guys jump in on this one, or I could tag it and take it however we want to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of that's kind of in Dave's court. He
Yeah.
made a post, so I'll give you kind of the answer that he gave. Partly the question is we approached all of the different table VTTs, virtual tabletop producers, and said, "Hey, here's what we're making. Kind of here's the logistics. Here's the deal that we can do." And those of them that said yes are the ones that we're supporting. So we have a deal with Roll20 and we have a deal with Foundry VTT. Fantasy Grounds didn't take the bait, as it were, right? So they didn't make the agreement. There's a little complexity, and Dave explained this. Because we have licensed properties associated with our game, there are licensing fees we have to pay anytime we publish something, right? So if the VTTs want to charge in their marketplace something for those elements of our game that are part of the licensed property, a payment has to get made to the license holder. And that doesn't necessarily work out well for all of the VTTs out there. They're not really accustomed to doing this all the time, right? So we were able to get that arranged with Roll20 and with Foundry, but we couldn't make that happen with Fantasy Grounds at the moment. So not to say we want to close the door, because we wanted to open the door to everybody, but it's just there's extra complexities involved when you have these licenses, and that wasn't something we could arrange at the time. And nobody on our staff has the skill currently to be able to go make a full implementation in one of these. We have to have a partnership where somebody else is going to do the development for it, and then we're going to review and make sure it meets the standards, right? So yeah, it's just one of those relationships. So at this time, we can't promise that, but we'd like to have one, right? So if we can figure out a way to make that happen, and maybe after a release, they'll change their minds, and if that happens, great, right? We'll be right there.
Yeah, one of the things that I feel like I've been responding with a bunch is that we're a small team, and we're not closing the door or anything. The future is very bright, and if things get into alignment, I think that there's a chance for anything to happen here. But as it stands now, this is where we are. So a very excellent question. Thank you for asking it, DrexDix 4262. We're going to move on to Sir Rowan 1. If the hunter is in the class lookbook on the website, if the hunter is in the class lookbook on the website, how is it a stretch goal?
Shall I answer this, or does someone
Go for
else
it.
Bring it on.
Okay, all right. Well, here's one of the secrets when it comes to Kickstarters. I don't know how much of a secret it is, but when you're developing a rules product and you want to get to a certain point before you go to Kickstarter, right? But usually you don't do it when you're all the way ready, done with everything. So it's kind of somewhere in between. So a lot of the things that you're going to see in the Kickstarter, we want to be in the core game. But page counts and other considerations mean, and just the nature of Kickstarter means you need to have stretch goals. So we develop the material ahead of time that's going to be part of the Kickstarter. We don't produce it, but we'll get some art for it. We'll do the writing and the game design, because everything's got to fit together, right? So our game is currently in editing right now. But like, if the hunter didn't make it, well, it wouldn't be in the book, right? But we do produce a lot of that ahead of time. So for like the GM screen, which is also in there, did we already design the GM screen? Yes, we did. Did we pay to have it produced? No, we didn't do that yet, right? So there's going to be a lot of things in the Kickstarter that definitely have already been worked on that are in the stretch goals, right? But you do have to unlock them to get those things. And they do cost us money of one kind or another to put in the book, the extra material and all that kind of thing. So it's kind of variable, but that's the truth of most Kickstarters. When you see the stretch goals, it's going to be a mix of things that they've already prepared ahead of time because they really planned on hitting those goals, and things that they plan to produce but they haven't quite gotten to yet on the schedule. So it really depends on the kind of thing it is. But if it's an element in the core book, we did already work on the writing and design for it. If it's an extra thing that doesn't go in the core book, it's more likely something that we have planned and we've talked about how we're going to do it, but we haven't done it yet, because that core book and the core rules has to be there, a solid foundation for everything else that comes after it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying is that our stretch goals is just saving things from the editing floor.
A little bit.
Saving things from the cutting room floor. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, there was discussions right up until before the Kickstarter went live about which classes were going to be stretch goals and which ones weren't, right? Because we want them to be ones that are attractive, right? But that if they didn't make it, the book would be complete and still feel functional without them, right? So, and there was some back and forth. And to be honest, Dave, who's the president and the owner of the company, he's the marketing guy. And so he will make decisions, and the design team sometimes has to follow along behind, right? So sometimes we don't all get together and plan those things out. Dave is the one who ultimately makes the call, and we support whatever that is, because it's his company and his game, right? So on that one, there was some back and forth about which ones would be in the stretch goal up to the last minute. That's also why you see the hacker listed as one of the characters in the game, but it's also the first stretch goal. A little bit of a miscommunication happened there. But so it goes.
Yeah, it was unlocked very fast though. So
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we have a sense, right? We don't know exactly how this Kickstarter is going to come out, but we have guesses based on how much marketing we did and what other Kickstarters do. It's a big part when you're getting ready. You try to figure out how far you're going to go. You try to plan beyond that as well. But yeah, I mean, we knew for sure that was going to unlock, right? Like that's pretty much guaranteed. Exactly where it stops, I'm not going to say, right? But you can make your own guesses. There are projectors out there that you can use to try and figure these things out. But we're going to try to make it go as high as it can, and we hope the fans are also going to do that too, right? And then together, more money means we can do more stuff. So that's
awesome. Just having this conversation, but I promise we're going to get right back to the questions. I kind of have to ask, Jeff, can you recall anything that hit the cutting room floor with the original?
Yes, I do.
Yes,
I do. There were 4 designers, myself, Charles Ryan, Bill Slavisek, who was the lead, and Rich Redmond. And each one of us contributed a world to basically a campaign setting. And there was not enough room in the books because we had, bought that amount of paper. We had already decided what the size of the book was going to be. We, of course, all overwrote. And Rich's setting was dropped. And I don't know what became of it. So Rich Redmond had an unknown setting that was never published in the box in the book itself.
I know there's got to be some collector that's sitting in the audience right now that's like,
ooh, I want that.
I want it.
I don't know.
Any idea what it was?
No, I believe it was a military setting.
Yeah, well, if you check that, if you check out our interview that we have about the original D20 Modern, he discusses it, and he talks a little bit about what happened to it. I think he said that it did get repurposed for some later work. Right, so it did get published, but not in the core book.
We did do some D20 related products in Polyhedron magazine later on. There were several that were set up, and I think a lot of the components there found their way into print that way.
Yeah, and we've had stuff that we wrote for Everyday Heroes but didn't use.
Yes,
and some of that you'll see as the Kickstarter, like the advanced profession system that's been unlocked. That's something I designed, but it was just too much for the core book. We would have had like a third of the book be professions or something, right? It is a bit much.
Oh, yeah.
So that got put aside, but we're like, well, this would make a pretty cool stretch goal for people who really want this complex system about advancing your career and moving from job to job and doing that in a mechanical way.
And there are components as well that need to be a little more time for cooking in the oven to basically get them to the point where we think we can bring them forward to people. And as the Kickstarter moves forward and we unlock stretch goals, that becomes more of a potential for us.
Yep. And there is material that we cut because it just didn't have a place in the book when all was said and done. We wrote it, we thought it was cool, but it didn't slot in anywhere. So I wrote a thing about criminal culture, how trust works as a currency inside criminal gangs and the illicit drug world and a bunch of stuff like this about money laundering. But in the end, there really wasn't a place in the book for it. Some of the material got to stay.
Did the Tyrannosaurus make it into the final cut?
Oh yeah, he's still
Okay, because that was one
T-Rex
that
is
was
there.
one that was early. We basically said, okay, we put this in to see if we can do that, and then we said it's out, it's out. So
Yeah,
I
I think
lost
that
track
was
of
our
it.
first example stat block to put
Yes, it
in
was.
like our format. And
yeah, Dave's like, I don't know about that
stuck around.
Tyrannosaurus, man. Like,
Yeah.
put that in there. But it was also
and-
the first thing we used in one of our adventures, so you know.
Yep. Yeah,
all
there's
right.
a couple more prehistoric ones in there. The giant ape didn't make it in, but that's because it's probably just going to be in Kong, you know.
So yeah, this is Skull Island. Yeah, we got that.
Yeah,
covered.
we got plenty of time to bring them back.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next question. Again, that question was Sir Rowan 1. Thank you very much for that. Our next question is from the Old Dragoon. Has there been more discussion of an ability for third-party folks to publish adventures or settings for Everyday Heroes? I think we're still a little early.
Yeah, I think there has been some discussion of it, but I don't think there has been anything like locked down in that sense. I think basically the idea is we want to have that, we want to be able to do that, and the system is based on like the like open gaming license or whichever license that is. I think Sig knows more about that.
Yeah, I'm kind of an
That's right.
OGL expert of sorts. Because I used to work on the Netbook of Feats back when the OGL was first started, and those were the wild frontier days where people had never seen anything like this before and had to figure it out. But yeah, so our rule content, so everything in our books that is rules of some kind, it's a table, numbers, stats, that kind of thing. We publish under the Open Gaming License, which means anybody, if you want to use that stuff and put it into your game, you can go ahead and do that. Right, and you can publish your game and sell your game. So that's how the Open Gaming License is meant to work. If it's rules content, then you can absolutely take that, use it, and build off of it. The things that you can't with the Open Gaming License use are like, just because we're going to put out a Highlander book doesn't mean you can make a Highlander game and publish that because it's an OGL. That doesn't fly. If it has to do with the world and the setting, people's names, characters, stories, the kind of text we use to teach how to be a new game master, that kind of content is not open gaming content, and you can't use it. And you definitely can't use people's trademarks like Everyday Heroes. So if you wanted to make a game that was an Everyday Heroes game in name, right, and you wanted to put that on the cover of the book, then you need a licensing agreement with Evil Genius Games. If you just want to use our mechanics and make something that's compatible for it, then you can totally do that, and you don't have to ask us permission, right? So that's kind of how Open Gaming License works. Now, we would like third-party publishers to be able to make products that align with Everyday Heroes and are branded as such and are part of the Everyday Heroes family, you might say. That's something we don't have a licensing agreement in place for yet. But Dave intends to do that. And we've had third-party publishers, folks I know, come to ask Dave, can I do this? And Dave has said, yeah, we'll work out the details, but yes, we want to do that. So I think our main goals will just be to maintain quality, make sure that when they're saying they're compatible, that we've taken a look at it and everything lines up nicely, and they're not, misrepresenting the rules in some way, and that the overall quality of the product is good enough that we want to be associated with it. And I think it won't be a public license, like anybody can just do it, but it'll be a license. There'll be an easy way to do it. So, email us, let us look at the product, and then we'll have a thing that say yes or no. I don't know if it will cost anything or not. There's a cost to reviewing material, right? So there may be some nominal licensing fee just to keep us from going crazy trying to review a million products, right? You have to have a little skin in the game kind of a thing. But we're not looking to do that to make money on your product, probably. It's more likely to be, we just want to make sure everything associated with the brand is cool, and like that, and make it pretty easy to do. Because we kind of, we want the game to go big and like have everybody be part of it and get people involved and all that kind of stuff, right? The company kind of was built with that feeling in mind. Yeah. When it comes to like the licensed movies and stuff, that's going to be hands off because movie studios own those things and they will come for you with their flying gunships if you use their IP without paying them for it, right? So that we can't share. But the Everyday Heroes core system definitely is going to be available to people to link up to.
Yeah, we've all heard the story of the Marvel sniper, so we don't want to get involved with any of that. Again,
Hawkeye coming around.
you know how mad I'd be if that's the Avenger they sent to take me out. Anyway, I can't even get Iron Man. All right, thank you so much, Emil Dragoon. Moving on to our next question by midarn_Black Halo. Are we going to see any of the D20 Modern settings return, or are they all Wizards of the Coast IPs that are not accessible? Dark Matter, Shadow Chasers, Urban Arcana, etc. Yeah, I'm going to let you guys hop on that one.
those would be Wizard IPs.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure we are not going to be able to use those.
But, and there's a major thing that we could do a modern urban fantasy setting, basically using the rule sets. We could do something in that genre, as long as we do not use the IP material that basically comes out of Wizards of the Coast.
Yep. Absolutely.
Seems like
it's important to note that we don't have licenses from Wizards of the Coast. The open gaming license is something everybody can use, right? And the SRD that they publish is specifically published for third-party publishers to be able to use it. But anything that Wizards of the Coast has as a trademark or a name or a setting or a world is hands-off. Right. And they usually do not license that out to other game companies. Movie studios, sure. Toy makers, okay. But other game companies, almost never, right? So that's probably not going to happen. But we totally love those settings and would like to do something with our own IP in those veins. And also looking at the whole creative world that surrounds them, taking the best from everything and try to create something we think is really cool.
Yeah, I think people have been real hungry for Urban Arcana. And, well, we can't use that specific name, that specific IP. I mean, we've talked about having our own like urban fantasy setting. There's no specific plan, but
I did suggest in our private chat, Urbane Arcane.
Yeah. I don't know if that would fly, but if it would, it's pretty good.
Hasbro's going to kidnap one of our loved ones.
No. I just went Monty Cook Games a long time ago did Arcana Unearthed as opposed to Unearthed Arcana. So
yeah.
But trust us, we have heard the outcry for modern fantasy settings, and we're going to figure it out for you.
Yeah, I got notes. I got notes for it as soon as we can pull the trigger.
Yeah, and I'll say this is also a great opportunity for a third-party publisher. If there's somebody out there, they have a brilliant idea and they're ready to do the work to like make a real setting, contact Evil Genius Games. And we've talked to a couple people like that that we didn't quite think were ready to hit the ground running with it, right? But that's the kind of thing we would be looking for licensing deal. So if someone thinks they could produce that and they want to get connected, let us know. We'll talk about it, right?
Yeah, we're open for conversations for sure. And again, great question, midarn_Black Halo. Moving on to our next question, because man, we're getting quite a few of them. Mr. Square Peg asked, how thick is the core rulebook?
Our page count now.
I love that it's not the page count, but how thick is the book?
Yeah, can I just say it's thick?
Yeah,
with 3 C's.
Yeah, we haven't done layout yet, so it's hard to know. Like in Google Docs, it's a little more than 500 pages of content without any illustrations or anything like that. About 170,000 words, which is a pretty big book. So I'm going to guess it's rolling in, in the 400 to 600 pages, somewhere in there, right?
It's gonna be hefty,
Absolutely. So
we like big books and we cannot lie.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a combination. It's a full game, right? It's got player material for making characters and a lot of that. It's got a full set of rules that cover a wide range of things. It's got a pretty big equipment list. It's got a huge selection of NPC stat blocks, and it's got a whole game master section that goes from square one for brand new game master all the way up to kind of the particulars of dealing with certain kinds of modern action scenes, like how do you handle snipers, how do you deal with like a hostage situation, how do you deal with all kinds of different scenarios you're going to see in action movies all the time, how to make those narratively fun and exciting, right? So it's a really complete, very deep game. So it's going to be a pretty big book.
Yeah, I'm guessing like I don't know, maybe about this thick.
We're giving you a pitch rating.
That's my prediction.
Okay.
We'll see how close I am.
Let's see.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm pulling this out here.
Now see, y'all
The
messed up.
original D20 Modern came in at 384 pages. So
Ooh,
that's this thick. So
that's
give you an idea of what you're talking about. And that's at the low end for Sig's estimate. So
Right. Yeah. It'll probably come in a little bigger than that.
Oh, Mr. Square Peg, thank you so much for that question.
Yeah. By the way, here at
where
Grub
we're gonna
Street,
end up,
we refer to that as Jeff's lair power. If you
Yes.
ask about any RPG, he will go to his lair and produce it for you.
this is true. They say, "Oh yeah, I got one of those downstairs." So
Oh man, so we have another question from that's not a question, but it's more of a suggestion, but I'm gonna read it out loud anyway. It's coming from the Old Dragoon, who says, "Ooh, while you're doing John Carpenter movies, Big Trouble in Little China?" ?
oh, that's a favorite film for a lot of us.
I do love that movie. But we'll just hop to another question. We love that suggestion.
Let's answer. I want to give a little answer for it, right? I mean,
okay.
that's the thing. Yeah. So
I'm ready for it.
yeah, we'll try to get any and all licenses we can, right? Like we didn't take the we're just going for this one. We went to the studios and said, what do you got? Right? Like, here's the zone that we're interested in. Of course, not all John Carpenter movies are owned by the same license holders, to be honest, right? So he'll do it for one studio and then another studio, and films get bought and sold and moved around. So we've got 3 studio partners right now that we're working with, and there were more films that we could have done, but we said, look, 8 is as many as we can handle. So there'll be more stuff, and no door is closed as far as we're concerned. We'd never turn down Big Trouble in Little China because it's like my favorite movie of all time, right?
So good.
so yeah, I want that, but we don't have that one yet. So that's the deal.
Yeah, somewhere in our bios on the website, it has our favorite action movie listed, and I know that's yours. So
yeah,
I would not be mad at that being brought to the table. Not at all. Let's see. So you know what? I'll pull a question that I pulled from some of the forums, which is and it kind of plays into that question. Can we explain how the season pass works? So I know that we have our 8 movies. We already have an idea of what we're looking at in season 2, but I think there's a question as to how we're delivering that to the user base. Do we want to jump in on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I can sort of explain what I know so far, which is that the plan is, I think, somewhere around 100-page books for each one, where half of it's an adventure, and then half of it is setting and mechanics and kind of whatever goes into that specific IP. So, for Pacific Rim, you're going to need, rules for how the Jaegers and Kaiju work, how drifting works, all that. And the plan is to have one class in each of those, in addition to any other material that makes sense. If there's equipment, if there's feats, if there's special rules, whatever. And I believe the idea is we're going to release each of those sequentially, digitally, and then there's going to be a compilation that you can get digitally or physically that is like sort of just the mechanics from each of those. I'm not sure if the idea is if it's going to be just sort of that whole first 50 pages of stuff, or just sort of the crunchy side of it without the like setting info and everything. But you'll be able to get at least the rules mechanics section of that as like its own big physical printed book.
Yep. Yeah, I think the thing is when we do the rules compilation, there's going to be elements of IP, intellectual property, that we can't carry over. So if we have a rule about drifting, you can't put that in a OGL, piece of rules. So we're going to have to change it around a little bit, so it's a little more generic for this compilation book. So there'll be some changes between what's in those books and what's in the compilation, just based on rights holding and stuff like that. So that it's kind of more pure OGL material, because that's kind of the point. It's just a rule book, and you can use it for all your different settings and games and stuff. So a little bit of difference will be there, but the core mechanics that you see in all those books will be in that compilation. And it's going to depend a little on the setting. So like Pacific Rim is probably going to be pretty heavy on supplemental rules, right? Those first 50 pages are going to both be establishing the setting information, but also like how do you do the things in the game? Because Everyday Heroes is about the modern world, and of course Pacific Rim is about the future, and there's a lot that's different. As where Escape from New York is about a future past. So there's not all that much setting information that isn't already in our core book. As far as basic rules and how the world works and what you can do. So you're going to see more backgrounds and character classes and, just kind of additional material that isn't in the core book that is connected to the film some way. So the kind of rules content you'll get in each book will be a little bit different, but there'll always be a class and some basic character building options. But how many new like core rules there will vary widely on the setting. So it's really the needs of the setting are going to dictate the content of the book.
Awesome. So we hope that cleared that up for you. And we've got another one here from Midern Black Halo, which is, what thought process led the design away from ability score themed classes, aka the strong, the fast, the devoted, to more specific character archetypes?
Well, I mean, we use those as sort of the basis. Essentially, the idea is the way 5th edition handles like their classes and stuff, rather than having like an advanced class or prestige class or something. Generally, you are picking a subclass. So you're a rogue, and then also you're an assassin. You're a wizard, and also you're a necromancer. That sort of design is the way that they did it, and we wanted to use that kind of an idea because I think that it really helps with like you can still create all this extra content in like future books, give people more options, but you're not just completely overwriting what already exists. Like in 3rd edition, it's like there's no reason to take more than a few levels of a base class in most cases, because at that point you take this prestige class and then you go into this and then you dip into this one, and then and so like why are there even 20 levels of fighter? You're only ever going to use 4
Strong hero
maybe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And D20 Modern used that system, and I think it did it better because it was kind of more modular. It wasn't really intended that you would be a level 10 strong hero or something. Like you could, but it's much more multi-class focused.
The potential existed for you to be a generalist under that system, basically being a versatile character that could basically go through a number of different type of adventures. Here, we basically, in Everyday Heroes, we have the idea of putting you upon a path that gets you to that cinematic moment much swifter.
So the idea here is to kind of use that the class based, class and subclass system, The difference between this and 5e is that what we're calling archetypes would be something like fighter or rogue in D&D, and then what we're calling classes would be the subclasses in that. And the reason for the terminology shift there is because the subclass, what we're calling classes, is more in depth. It sort of defines more about your character, whereas the archetypes are very broad. They get you sort of some basic abilities. They determine how you calculate your defense, what your hit die is, that kind of thing. And then they sort of function as categories that we can plug things into. And the mental ability score ones also each have a resource that then the individual classes give different ways to spend. So, you've got our charming heroes all have influence dice, but the base charming class only has one thing you can spend that on, which is just you can add it to a charisma check. But then each of the charming hero classes has a whole list of tricks you could get that are all new ways to spend that. So it's they're foundations on which we build the classes. So they're still very much fundamental to the design of it. But we wanted you to be able to sort of do the thing that you want to do right away. At first level, if you want to be the sharpshooter, you're a sharpshooter at first level. You don't have to wait until level 2, level 3 to, get the right thing. And you don't have to wait until you're high level to get all 6 dual wielding feats in order to make that remotely usable. There were all kinds of things like that in third edition where, you had to wait to be your character. And even 5e, there's a couple situations where you need to get to level 2 or 3 before you can really be the archetype you want it to be. So we just really wanted to make sure that you can be your character right off the bat.
Let Paladin smite at level 1. Sorry. I'm gonna hold that in this one.
Yeah, or the example I used is druids can only wild shape at 2nd level. But if you're a druid from the wild shaping clan that is all about wild shaping and that's your whole backstory and character, having to wait a level is weird.
This may come as a surprise to the younger members of the team here, but way back at the earliest days when dinosaurs roamed the earth, you could only cast first level clerical spells at 2nd level. You did not get cure light wounds until you hit 2nd level. So a lot of clerics died early on.
Yeah.
I remember I think it was Stan that was telling me at a certain point, there was 2 things that would happen to a wizard. Either 1, they would die, or 2, they would get fireball.
Yes. Fireball is one of those spells. At that level, you suddenly arrive at level 5.
It's like you take all that anger from being weak on those other levels and you just spin it at people. I love it.
I am in a D&D campaign where the wizard has attained level 5 and he is much, much calmer right now. So.
All right. So moving on to our next question. I could talk about Fireball all day. Moving on to our next question, and I had it and I lost it. Here we go. Got a question about combat, mainly shooting weapons and damage in everyday heroes. 1, will there be rules for locational damage in everyday heroes? 2, how deep is the combat for shooting things such as weapons on a scale of 1 being pretty simple to 10 being Phoenix Command? And this is another one from Mr. Squarepeg.
All right. I'm probably the guy to talk about that. Yeah. So let's see. I'll answer that in reverse order. So about a 5, it's kind of in the middle. It's a little bit more firing guns on Everyday Heroes is a little more complex than swinging a sword in Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm going to give it a 5, and I'll talk about why in a second. As far as like damage locations, we don't get into that, but we do have that in our vehicle system. So when you do damage to a vehicle, it can like damage the power on the vehicle, it can damage the steering, it can damage the body, you can blow out the tires. We do vehicles rather differently than we do people. So objects get treated differently than autonomous beings, let's say, in Everyday Heroes. Because I think the two things are kind of fundamentally different in various ways, right? So there's a little, I don't want to say complexity, but there's a little difference there. In a way, it makes dealing with objects and destroying objects easier in Everyday Heroes than it does when you try to use the regular rules for 5e, let's say. Okay, so complexity, here's the deal. So there's a little bit of extra complexity with firearms. There are some options for ammunition. That's kind of an optional rule, but we talk about if you want to use different loads. You need to reload a weapon by default if you use all the rounds in the weapon. There are different kinds of attacks you can do with firearms. We have something called suppressive fire, which is where you get an automatic or semi-automatic weapon, and you want to like make people get behind cover and stay out of an area. So you fill an area with bullets. Anybody who doesn't get out in a hurry is going to get hit by a bullet. And it's a special kind of attack, and it has this kind of own set of rules. It's kind of like persistent area damage. So that area will be filled with bullets until your next turn. And people need to not be there, right? Or they get hit. So that it adds a really deep strategic layer of complexity, right? So if you're up against a machine gun's great against a bunch of opponents, or you need people to not be taking shots at your melee characters while they run forward to engage the enemy. So you lay down covering fire. So we've got that in there. There's a burst fire mechanic for when you're trying to do extra damage. You get disadvantage on the attack roll, but you get extra damage dice if you hit. So there are different kind of maneuvers you can do with different kinds of weapons. And, of course, we've got long range weapons like sniper rifles. You can shoot somebody from a mile away. That actually gets complicated, not from a game mechanic standpoint, but from a narrative standpoint and how initiative and rounds work in combat. We cover all that in the book. So guns definitely introduce a little more complexity, but my goal was to make it not a hassle during play. Like, it shouldn't slow you down, but what it does do is it adds a little tactical complexity if you want to do that. So like, you can play it if you don't worry about some of these rules. I just shoot my gun. That's fine. The rules work great, right? But if you want to do a military game and you really want to get into the real tactics of military combat, I did my best to try and include elements in the game that would let you do that and feel realistic to Hollywood realistic. There's a little bit of a spectrum there, and it depends on exactly how you do some things. And there are places where I mentioned both. So like in the entry for a suppressor, it says something like, a suppressor lowers the volume of sound from a firearm such that you could only hear it from a few hundred yards away instead of a couple of miles away, right? A silencer is a device in Hollywood movies that makes guns whisper quiet, right? So you can choose, right, for your game, which of these effects this item is going to have, depending on whether you're trying to run a realistic kind of a game or you're running a real action Hollywood game and you're going to play fast and loose with reality. Your choice. And we try to support both. But I did an awful lot of reading about military tactics and especially to get that covered. Cover me, right? You hear that all the time in action movies. And so we got to have that in the game. So I really researched exactly how it works in warfare and in gun battle tactics and how you do that. And I tried to make the game give that feeling. And I was really happy with that mechanic because it really does have a rich feeling to it. So, you lay down suppressive fire and people do not just want to take damage. So they will usually duck behind cover. We have a dive for cover mechanic. So you can sort of get a little bit of movement to try and get out of the area, get behind a doorway or something. And it really has a big impact on the way battles play out. And it's a lot of fun to play with. So hope you like it.
I can tell you firsthand, after having played a sniper in the system, love it. Nothing better than making somebody's day bad a mile away.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, like, I streamed a test game I did, and the first couple fights we did were mostly with like sort of melee enemies that were just charging in, attacking, and it was like, oh yeah, this feels a lot like 5e D&D. Like it's it's real familiar, real good, some good tactics, but not too complicated. And then we got into a gunfight, and it was like, oh, this feels kind of different. Like people are really trying to stay behind cover, and like it feels different, yet is not like super complicated. It's just with a couple tweaks, it's like, oh, this actually, there's some decisions to make here. And so I think it really worked out.
Yeah, it could be a really tactical game where, because I've done a bunch of playtesting, and in playtest, if the party is smart and they use tactics and they set up an ambush and they've got a sniper in a tree and they, have coordinating their attacks and everything, that encounter can be easy peasy for them. You take those same bad guys, and the bad guys are the ones springing the tactics and the ambush on the players. It's a struggle, and maybe they'll live and maybe they won't, right? So the way you approach combat can have a huge outcome on the outcome of the combat, especially if you're using all the rules and you're playing very tactically. But again, it's also balanced. Yeah, like Uber said, if you're just playing fast and loose and you just have that encounter at close range and you're not worrying about there's a couch and there's a deck and I'm hiding behind the armored tank and stuff. You can just handle it narratively and keep it really simple and nice balanced combat, and it works out about like you expect. But yeah, turn all the screws, play with the knobs, and you can do all kinds of cool stuff.
I just love you can control your level of Hollywood, Hollywood magic in your game. From silencer to concealer is pretty cool.
We built the game to support like a huge variety of movie licenses, right? And so that also means it supports a huge variety of aesthetics for your home game and how you like to play.
And we've got
hacking can be realistic, or it can be typing away on with green text on a black background in a dark room.
I'm in.
Yeah, we got a plan called "I'm In."
Yes,
for the hacker.
Our next question comes again from Sir Rowan. So we're on 1. Thank you for being so transparent about the Kickstarter. Can you comment at all on the mechanics like possession or cybernetics from a narrative perspective or from a rules mechanics standpoint?
Yes,
only a little bit right now, because we actually are we're just getting into that basically from a design perspective. Like we know what the books are, we know when they'll be ready, but we've only sort of just started watching through these movies and thinking about how is this class gonna work and everything. So I could talk briefly on what we've talked about with the Crow. Not none of this is fully nailed down, but the plan with the Crow is you can be one of the people brought back to life by the spirit, and that's most likely going to be a class. So that's pretty much what you are, because being undead, being nearly unkillable, those are real big abilities that really define a character. But the plan is to also have the ability to, with feats, either through multi-classing or just kind of their own kind of feats, you could get spirit powers. So you don't all have to be a zombie in order to play a game where everyone is really participating in that theme. You can each kind of get some spirit powers. And then also the idea is to have kind of a pantheon of spirits. So you might be a resurrected by the wolf, or have made some kind of connection with the fox spirit, and you're not undead or anything. You're actually, our hacker character's name is the Fox in weird leet speak. So I immediately thought like a hacker who has contacted the fox spirit would be really cool for that. So yeah, there's a couple different directions that you can approach spirit powers from, and there should be a good range of spirit options. But that's kind of exemplary of how we're kind of taking a look at this. Is how are people actually going to play this? You sit down to play the Crow. Here's the Crow book. We're going to play the Crow adventure. Like, it would be weird if one person was the Crow and everyone else was just like a guy. And you could do that, absolutely, and I think some people will. And you can bring Crow material into another game, mix and match. But we wanted to make sure that if you go into it, everyone wants to do the cool new thing in this book. That works. You're not just all the same character, carbon copies of each other.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll say, like, those specific class names and things, Dave came up with those because he needs something to put on the marketing material. So those were created before rules were created to follow them. So maybe not something will have that exact name, right? But he's picking up on themes of the thing. So like he thought of the Crow as possessing people. My take of the movie franchise is it doesn't possess people. It kind of grants them powers so that they can fulfill a mission that they died, wanting to do, to get justice and vengeance for their lost love and that kind of thing. So the Crow doesn't really control those people. It sort of enables them to do the thing they wanted to do in the first place. But that's fine. It's different interpretations. And in the end, we'll work something out that we all think is really cool, right? And that stays true to the movie material, but also gives people a little creative freedom to branch out and make their own interpretations on it and build up some things that if the license holders allow us that aren't in the movie, but we think would be really cool parts of the world, or things that are only touched on, but then we build them out to have a little bit more meat on the bones so that you can get in and role play it.
Yeah, it's been a battle this whole time not to start quoting the Crow. Like the Crow is like the connection for Eric Draven between the world of the living and the damned. That's why they attack the bird and everything. It's just so good. Anyway,
it's actually got a really cool, rich world. The Crow's really cool. We were asked to come up with an example to kind of double time on a class for the Crow. So we've been working on that this week, and both Goober and I did kind of our own independent interpretation, and then Goober's taken those ideas and merging them and working it out. So we're going to have something actually to show people on the Crow, to kind of our interpretation of how to represent a character like the Crow in terms of class and abilities. So that should be kind of fun to check out when it's all done.
Yeah. And Zero, the whole point of this Q&A is to be transparent with all of you. And also, we take in feedback, we hear it, and it does help guide us in the ways that we're going here. So we're glad that all of you are enjoying this. We are very appreciative of the questions. Let's power through, make sure that we can get to everybody here. The next question that I see is are there plans for supplements aside from the movie license books, which can add rules for supernatural characters and abilities, cybernetic magic, etc., or will these only be contained in movie license books? So I think we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, but I mean, we could just kind of put in a nice bow on it.
Yeah, there's some ideas like Dave had put together, even like covers for some things for like a weapons locker, the garage for vehicles, and like a military expansion. So I think that's definitely something that we're looking at, and I'm going to be pushing for a Urban Arcana style thing to be our first entry into that, because that's what I'm into, and that's what everybody has been asking about. So
and we don't
no plans quite yet.
Yeah, we don't have plans in terms of like this is what the book's going to be about, this is when it's going to release, that kind of plans. We do have plans in the sense that wow, everybody wants urban arcana, we should come up with something, right? So it's well within the realm of possibility and our intent, but we couldn't tell you what we're going to do yet because we haven't decided.
Yeah. So our next question is by Krill Holder, who asked, so sorry. Our next question is by Stella Luna. Hey, Stella. And the question is, are there vehicle mechanics or monster blocks?
There are vehicle mechanics.
Yes.
We wanted to include a whole chase system. I mean, that's kind of why I'm here. Dave wanted to make sure that for modern action movies, there's going to be fun chases, and I had put a chase system up on the DM's Guild for 5e. So that's how we got in contact. And vehicles for their rules kind of followed from that. Though that set of rules is a bit more narrative, a bit less crunchy. It's a little bit more kind of free flowing. And so the vehicle design is a little bit more towards that. We didn't want to have just like tracking hit points for cars, because that's kind of boring. What's exciting is, the car gets shot and now it's leaking something and you got a penalty, and the tire blew out, roll to see if you crash. And we wanted to keep it really, really exciting for that. So basically vehicles are very simplified. They have ability modifiers for strength, which is their like speed and acceleration, dexterity for maneuverability, and constitution for their like durability. And rather than track like hit points for them, they're basically making a save whenever they take enough damage that from a weapon that is good enough to get through their armor. So you can stab a car all day with a knife and you're not you're going to scratch it up. It's going to look bad, but unless you're going for the tires, you're not going to actually damage the thing. But if you've got a weapon that can actually do some damage to it, then you shoot it. It makes a save, and on a failed save, it's totaled. You got it right in the engine. That vehicle's not working anymore. And on a pass save, you hit something else, and that's where you get the you're leaking brake fluid, or you got steering problems, you got your engine is damaged, that kind of thing. So yeah, we got a whole list of vehicles, and at some point either we'll make some kind of a vehicle expansion, or I don't know, maybe we'll get something like Fast and Furious and get to do a whole adventure about it. But
we'll come up with the family mechanics.
Yeah. And I'll say, I'm working on Escape from New York right now, and I'm going to have a class in there probably called Motorhead, which is like a guy who tinkers up cars, and because in the kind of these free zone New York, they're putting together steam powered cars and they're making their own weird vehicles. So it's kind of a little Mad Maxy kind of a character. You could use it for that kind of setting. So he's going to be both a tinkerer and a driver kind of combined into one hero. And then we may have some vehicle modification rules. And so we'll get a little more into the vehicles in that book, at least, because it calls for it. And recently, just, kind of at the tail end of our work on the core rules, I knew that we were going to get Pacific Rim. And I was like, right, I need to go over these vehicle rules and think about them in a way that they could be extensible to gigantic, 100-story robots. So put some extra work in there to try to make those rules, not like you're just going to be able to use them directly. There's going to be differences, obviously, but at least to have the core concepts be extensible out to kinds of vehicles we don't cover in the rule book, and interesting situations with machines, anything that kind of behaves like a vehicle you can kind of simulate. So I think we have kind of a cool system for doing that, that you could build a lot of detail onto it if you really wanted to, but you can also keep it pretty simple and not have to get into the details. Partly we just kind of looked at like what are all the cool things that happen with cars and car chases and in movies, and they're like, okay, well, how does that work in the rules? How do we represent it? And in many cases, we chose to kind of abstract it a bit, let the game master's imagination go, but still have enough mechanics so that there's some game effect to that leaking fuel line or the damaged engine, etc.
Yeah, and you can have a hot air balloon chase.
Wait.
That is an option in the system.
Because it doesn't take us a lot of stats to do up a vehicle, we put in a lot of vehicles. You could have a golf cart chase, a Segway, there's all kinds of fun stuff in there.
Are you telling me I can snipe a kaiju from a hot air balloon?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Not sure the kaiju cares that you're sniping him.
But...
Yeah.
Let me dream.
Like you can hit it. I don't know if you can hurt it.
You might make it mad.
Yeah, that's one of our design challenges is scaling of damage and attack. And we have this interesting system. It's pretty simple, really. Armor versus penetration. Weapons have a penetration level called penetration value, and then objects and physical armor that you might wear has an armor value. And you just compare those numbers, and if there's more penetration than armor, the attack is going to do something. And if it's less, then it's not going to do anything. And if it's even, well, it kind of depends on the situation. So that gets a little complicated, or not complicated, I should say, but situational. But it's a real simple system, and it really let us, when we built it for like wearing body armor, but then when we got into doing vehicles, it was great for that too. Right? I'm shooting a tank with my pistol, but it just doesn't do anything, right? It has no effect, right? The armor is just too much. But I'm shooting it with my rocket launcher. Okay, well, now it has an effect because the rocket launcher can penetrate that kind of armor. So that system really helped us deal with the modern world's scalability issue as compared to a fantasy world, right?
I still think I could take a kaiju with my sniper rifle. I believe in myself.
It's good to dream.
Our next question comes again from Mr. Squarepeg. Are there any plans for a near or far sci-fi rule supplement? I think we kind of have that in the sense of Universal Soldier. I would say could be considered near-ish. And we have Total Recall, which I would say be considered much further. But let's kick it to the designers here. What are your thoughts on the matter?
I mean, we've got the products that we got. We got the IPs that we have, and I think a lot of those are a little bit sci-fi, or a little bit fantasy. So not a D20 future level of here's a million ways to run a future game, but it's certainly a bunch of examples. And like Urban Arcana, I would be excited to do something like D20 Future.
The D20 Modern setting originally had the ability to go into different genres, both future and past historical settings as well. And I anticipate, Everyday Heroes to have that same potential, where while we're not designing a Everyday Heroes future yet, but the potential exists because of the foundation we're laying down.
And we do have some discussion in the core book about how to set a game in the 80s, how to set a game in the slightly near future. What major tech you don't have access to. Mostly cell phones is the big one,
and the internet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's pretty easy to do a near future. Cars are a little cooler, the internet's a little faster. Once you start getting into further future, then it's like what's the state of AI? What's the state of nanotech? And you got to start making decisions about that for your setting.
Just take comfort that the DMV will always be terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, though. I took that personally. All right, let's take a look at what we have next, which is if you ever do a sci-fi rule supplement, please consider Doom or Marathon Affinity as a campaign for that.
Interesting.
I'm not aware of what those two things are, but that sounds awesome.
Doom is classic. Yes.
I mean, if we're talking Doom, like the video game Doom,
that's what exactly, yeah.
And there was a movie, so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Marathon is a first-person shooter by Bungie before they did Halo. So it's a really cool science fiction setting. I played Marathon games on my Macintosh. It was one of the few first-person shooters you could get on the Mac. And Bungie started as a Mac developer, but at any rate, a little lore there. Yeah, I mean, if we could get, I'm sure we'd be happy to do licenses for video games as well. I don't know that we went looking for that just because there's only so much Dave can do as one man, try as a licensing machine. But we'd be totally open to that, and I'd love to do. Yeah, I think Marathon's a really cool setting. Most people don't know it, so it'd be kind of fun. People like, wow, this is really cool. I'm like, yeah, it was really cool a long time ago too. So.
Yeah, you could probably approximate Doom with the core rules. We got some demons, and the guns are mostly pretty normal guns. Like you're going to need a BFG.
Yeah, you need BFG.
Yeah.
And you might want to throw together a couple more specific demon stats, but you could get real close without having to make anything new, I think.
Yeah, I now that I know that we're talking about Doom, because I was thinking like movie Doom, like with The Rock, but no.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that too.
That was based.
I think I might be I didn't love it. I wanted to like it anyway. So we're not doing movie reviews. That'll be another Kickstarter stretch goal.
Well, I'll also say this, whether you love a movie or not, like a bad movie can make for a great role-playing game setting and vice versa, right? So like, Universal Soldier is not one of the most highly praised movies ever, but it's actually a really fun setting for role-playing possibilities for cool stories, right? So whatever you think about the movie, the game might be really awesome. So just because you don't like one of our movie properties or you do like another one, I'd say, at least check it out, when they come out. Give it a read in the game store and see if you like it, because there might be a lot more to it than you think.
Somebody brought up The Last Dragon, and I'm like, I'm with you there. Lemur and Green, let's go.
We'd love to do a hardcore martial arts setting of some kind. That would be really fun.
Oh, that would be so sick.
Yeah, Wuxia was one of sort of the examples I was talking about with when putting the class system together originally. Thinking about like how extensible is this? How many ideas can we plug into like these 6 archetypes? And so like I went through and looked at the like sort of animal styles, mostly the fantastic versions of them, and not any real life martial arts. And was like, oh yeah, we could do a bunch of these as different things. Like. I think you could do that setting and still have plenty of room for characters that aren't just agile or wise. Like one cool one was like spider style, which is all about like tangling people up in ropes and things. And I thought that would be an awesome smart hero class where like you enact your plan. That is that you set up this system of ropes and things and got somebody all tangled in it. And yeah,
I want to stand up the flying guillotine, if you know that film.
You gotta have the cheesy sound effect with just
oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Our next question comes from Evie Override. Cool name. This may have been asked, but are there any differences in how this game handles melee combat versus in the world's most popular RPG to create climactic kung fu battles, Highlander sword fights, etc.?
Yeah, thanks for helping us avoid the lawyers. Appreciate that. I'll say there's not a lot of differences. In Melee, we start with the 5e rules. That was kind of our foundation, and our rule was don't change anything unless you've got a good reason to. Like it's just going to serve the game better to change something, or it just gives us a unique flavor. So we didn't change the Melee rules very much. I will say the way we present two-handed fighting is different. It's not really different mechanically, but we present it in a different way. We just refer to it as an offhand attack. And you can get offhand attacks in a number of situations instead of specifically two-weapon fighting. Although, like I said, the rules actually haven't changed. Can you think of any other Melee things we do that are significantly different, Goober?
I don't think there's anything that is hugely different there. I mean, the way that we do armor is different, and that kind of applies everywhere. But I mean, basically, what I would say is 5e is very cinematic. That's one of the reasons I thought it would work really well for action movies, because it's not the most realistic system in the world. It's not the least realistic, but it's not that's not the goal. I think. Just sort of the way it does melee combat already is pretty exciting. I feel like we might end up with some kind of duels mechanic for Highlander. Get a little bit more into the 1v1, because that could end up sort of just like a slugfest.
Right, that wouldn't quite have the right feeling, yeah.
But typically, you've got a party. You're not the single action hero. You're that character split up into a bunch of people with a reasonable level of skill, instead of the main character who's good at everything. So generally, you're going to have a larger tactical situation that's going to make things very interesting, and at least as tactical as 5e. And I think that's already very cinematic. The way hit points work, they're not wounds. You barely duck the guy swinging a lead pipe at you, and you lose some hit points because that took some energy. That was some narrative force that got applied to saving you.
Yeah. Unless you're the Crow or Highlander, and then you can just beat them right on the head because that's not going to.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah. If you're the Crow.
Hit points are kind of a great mechanic in that they're flexible that way. You can interpret them as a storyteller in different ways to fit your genre better. But in the end, they serve the same game mechanic purpose, which is how long can you last in the fight? How much punishment can you take before you're out? So.
Yeah, and so you're getting into a situation where you're low on hit points. The person you're fighting is low on hit points. You get hit and almost go down, but you made your armor save, and you're sweating. Everyone's biting their fingernails. I think it gets real cinematic. Just sort of automatically.
And we did, for melee combat, when we were looking at melee characters, because it's a world of guns, we tried to make them have some way to respond to a gunfight. Either they're really tough, right, and they can just kind of soak it up as they're moving forward, or they're really fast and they can dodge up to the next piece of cover. So we tried to kind of think about how a melee character lives and dies in a world of guns, so that those classes never feel like they don't have a place in the game.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because guns in the modern world are sort of the default versus swords in a fantasy game. And so in Everyday Heroes, if you want to be the character who does all the damage, you that's all you care about. You just want to do damage. Guns are probably the way to go. Whereas in 5e, you probably want a big sword. But the difference isn't that much. And then melee characters get other cool stuff.
And I just remembered, punching does more damage in Everyday Heroes.
Yeah.
It's a D4 base, and classes that are expected to do unarmed combat have a lot more ways to increase that damage, and also damage abilities that classes get can be applied to unarmed. So the scoundrel who gets their like vulnerability damage, I've forgotten exactly what it's called right at the moment. It used to be called sneak attack, but we changed the name. Yeah. They can do extra damage with a punch. So like, you know, if you want to do that sneak up behind the guards and thing, well, yeah, it's just an unarmed attack, but you're going to apply the sneak attack damage, we'll call it for the moment. And the guard's going to go down. They're going to take a bunch of damage, right? So in our game, it's a little more cinematic, and because punching and kicking is so much a part of the action genre, right? And you can totally kill people that way. That's the way Everyday Heroes works. And so that will feel a little different. Like a guy with a sword, the sword does do more damage than a punch, but there's a lot more ways to enhance your punching than to enhance your sword play until we do Highlander.
Then all bets are off.
Yeah, and we have a fencer class actually, and they get a big damage bonus with finesse weapons to make the fencing deadly, right, and feel as dangerous as anything else. So that's kind of one of our class designs. Like if you're a combat class, and not all of our classes are combat focused, but if you are, you better feel deadly and dangerous, right?
Yeah, if you're running at a bunch of people with machine guns with your tiny little floppy sword, you better be able to be real good with it and do a lot of damage with it, and they are.
I'm loving some of the comments we're getting here. Every modern party has the katana trench coat guy.
Yeah, you could definitely be the katana trench coat guy.
I'm the kind of player who chooses the melee character and the shooter, so I appreciate the caregiving for that type. Hey, we're trying to take care of everybody at the table. All right, so we're getting down to the wire. I think we've got enough time here for about 2 or 3 more questions. So let's, and we've been getting a lot of fantastic movie suggestions, and trust me when I say that, like, we see all of these suggestions and we're chomping at the bit, like, yes, we want that too. So if we haven't commented on like all of the movie suggestions, trust us, we do see them and we agree with you 100%.
Keep them coming.
Looking at
you know, and a cool thing about the way we're doing them and our strategy of putting out these season pass of adventure is that we can do a lot of them, right? You know, they're bite size enough that we can go out and hit a lot of people's stuff. As where if we were doing giant 400-page source books on all of these, well, you'd see 1 or 2 a year. But because of our approach, you get to see a lot more. And so we'll cover a lot more of the cool things that people like.
Workshops ask, will someone be creating a character sheet for use with Roll20? Having custom sheets that does the math really helps with the new system. I can confirm, and I do believe Dave already confirmed this in chat as well. Yeah, I see that he did. Yes, we do have Roll20 making a custom character sheet for us because we also hate math. Let me not say that, but I'm not good at math, so I insisted. So that is something that is being taken care of. We have an example of that in our quick start guide that you can get at Roll20 right now. Also, we have our quick start guide available at Drive-Thru RPG. So if you're looking for a chance to kind of dive into the system and get a feel for it, that's the way to do it. I do know that we have an individual. Let me find your name so I can shout you out. Workshops. Workshops is waiting for the full release. He doesn't want to play anything with partial rules or rules that'll change. For the most part, our core rules are pretty locked in from what I okay, never mind. Yeah. Don't listen to me. I don't know.
Yeah, so the quick start was created during the playtest period. There are changes to the rules that will come out that are not like the armor system. It's the same in principle, but the actual mechanics are a little different because we made some further refinements through playtesting. So yeah, there's some details. Like ranges on a particular gun. The basic way the game works is going to be exactly like that, right? But there are little specific details that are different in the final rule set. from the Quick Start Guide. And also, Roll20 right now, they don't have a Everyday Heroes specific character sheet yet.
Okay.
They will, but they have not had enough time to put that together yet. We made our Quick Start Guide. We turned it around in 2-3 weeks, I believe. It was like we're like, we want a Quick Start Guide, go. And so we worked pretty fast, but Roll20 hasn't quite had enough time to do the full implementation yet.
Okay.
Yeah, computer code is a little harder than writing words. So give them a little time to catch up, but they'll get there.
So scratch what I said. Listen to the lead designer here. We got another question from our favorite Mr. Squarepeg, who asks, "Will we be able to build our own kaiju?" I'm assuming yes, but I just want to make sure.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
That would be
I don't know
pretty
we
cool.
commit yet. Yeah.
Yeah, it really depends on how they come together. I mean, so in the basic rules, I put together a pretty extensive, like, here's how to make an NPC stat block. There's all the numbers you need, so you don't have to do math. I figure a kaiju will be probably not much more complicated than an NPC stat block. So at the very least, there will be plenty of guidance on, like, here's how to design one.
Yeah.
As for, like, here's a table of special abilities you can pick from to modularly build a kaiju, maybe. Not sure.
Yeah, and I'll add that, we have a little bit of a special relationship when it comes to Pacific Rim and Kong Island, Kong Skull Island. There, let me get that correct. In that we will very likely, and part of our arrangement with them is to also have a full source book for those. We have not announced them. They're not part of the Kickstarter. It's a little too far in the future because it's a big chunk of work, and we're going to have to bring in more designers to do those. But the intent is that as a follow-up to the cinematic adventure, there will be a full Pacific Rim source book, big time, with lots of rules for everything you could ever want, right? The 50 pages that are going to be in the cinematic adventure is going to be a little more limited. It's definitely going to let you do everything that's going to be in the adventure itself and to give you enough to play in that universe. But I'm going to guess, like, building custom kaiju is something that would be more supported in the big source book version of that. Which, like I said, we can't say exactly that'll happen, but it's something we're talking about.
Have we announced the big source book yet, or is this the first?
Yeah, Dave's talked about it on other YouTube videos you can
just want to make sure we're not.
I wouldn't mention it otherwise.
Spoilers.
Yeah, so
oops, we gave y'all. No, I'm just kidding.
So David's talked about
here with the mom cardiac. And I think, did we talk about this before?
Yeah, like I said, exact plans, but that's an intent going down the line. So yeah.
I mean, yeah,
we're gonna have to get a bigger boat. Okay.
What the heck? I'm so sorry about that, y'all. Yeah. So, EV Override says, "Who's going to be the first to run an all kaiju party?"
That's got to be in there, right? Like rules for player kaiju battles has to be involved.
Yeah. I'm just gonna come out and say me. That's me. I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
He would be the man to do it. Yeah.
That's so much up my alley.
Dibs on the giant flying turtle. That's all I can say.
Oh.
Not mentioning any brands, just mentioning the giant flying turtle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be a giant kangaroo because I can't believe there hasn't been a kaiju kangaroo yet. And if there has been, somebody needs to send it to me.
Ancient game called Gamma Marauders. So, yes.
Ooh. Okay, I'm going to need to check that out.
Yeah. It was a board game by... Hello, love. Thank you. An ancient game by Zeb Cook from TSR. It was an extension of Gamma World, where you basically had to deal with, giant kaiju hamsters. And, yes, and one of them was a giant cybernetic kangaroo.
Hey, and I'm going to do a call out to our producer, Stan,
Yes,
who has gingerbread kaiju available on
that's
Drive-Thru
true.
RPG.
Mhm.
Yes.
And so your holiday, you make gingerbread kaiju, you battle and eat them. So I recommend people check that out.
And we have play
fantastic.
tested that. It's very good. Mhm.
Good fun.
Tasty. Mhm.
All right, so we're now to our last question. We're about an hour and a half in, and I know some of us have D&D games to get to, and I want to get y'all to them.
And my wife
and-
just brought me dinner, so this works out.
Yep.
I'm
So
sitting here smelling this. It's very good.
oh, I know that torture. So let me get you all out of here. And here's the question from the person that gave us our first question. They're also giving us our last question. Krill Holder asks, for each of the designers, if the floodgates were open and you could do anything, what would be your non-licensed dream supplement to make?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? We're
No, no,
search the
it's
catalog, search the
Non-licensed, like I was ready to be like, oh, Mad Max. I want Mad Max.
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned that. Somebody mentioned
Yeah.
Fifth Element, and I almost cried.
Yeah.
All right,
oh,
I got one. So you guys
Okay.
can think while I'm talking. I love police procedurals, and I especially love running them in the context of a fantasy game like Dungeons and Dragons. So I used to run Detectives and Dragons, where there's a murder, and the heroes have, for some reason, been tasked with finding out who did it and bringing justice, right? And I love mixing the world of magic into that because it opens up the doors of all kinds of crazy plots and how you determine what's evidence and what isn't, and then to do the investigation, the catch, and then the prosecution, right? To kind of that triumvirate, right?
And you've got that Law and Order Chong noise. Right?
Yeah, totally. So
Chong.
I want to do that in an urban fantasy setting. So that is an urban fantasy setting, but the details of the gameplay are all about investigating and resolving crimes and dealing with the legal system in a world of magic.
Ooh.
So that's my dream thing. And you can bet if I get involved in some kind of urbane arcana-ish project, I will be lobbying for some of these elements to be somewhere within, or an adventure, at least the details this. So
We have, we already hit on Arcane Urbane. The Arcane Urbane as as something that would be wonderful to do. I'm going to go actually after another game that has seen several incarnations and several rule sets, which is Paranoia. And this is an old school game. Greg Kostikian, Ken Ralston. It was just a future comedy where you are trapped in a underground bunker with your friend the computer, and your friend computer gives you assignments which are impossible to complete, and if you fail to complete them, you're a traitor and executed, because the computer is bugs up the wall bananas. And so it's a wonderful set. It's got a lot of great world buildings in it, and I've run it in various systems, and it's always been a delight watching the players turn on each other, because that's expected in this game. So I would say the mechanics that we have would work very well within that type of setting. Not saying it's available, but that's something I'd go after.
Ooh,
nice.
I dig it.
Yeah,
Uber.
I think other than just like your magic in the modern world kind of stuff, like my favorite like sort of larger genre is horror. So I think what I would really love is just like a huge source book of horror. Here's how to do cosmic horror. Here's how to do slasher movies. Here's how to do a one-shot horror game where people are just dying left and right. Here's how to do, long-term horror where you can actually play a character for a while, but still make it scary. Here's all kinds of weird monsters and, ways to set the tone and all that. Like, I think that would be a really fun, product to work on.
that would be. You all have like all these amazing suggestions, and like the one thing I was thinking, like if I ever did any kind of design work on this, is I would love to see a reality TV show game. I would love to see. I would love to see Survivor in our rule set. I think it'd be interesting, but
handle it.
But that, again, of course, was our last question. Thank you all so much for coming in, taking part, asking really great questions. And now I need to ask another favor of you. If you like this and you want to see more material like this, you have to let us know. Let us know on our socials. That's Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, and the Kickstarter itself. So if this is something that you like, please make sure that it's visible. And if you have any other questions, please tag them Hey Genius or wherever you put them in the social. So use the hashtag Hey Genius. That way we know if we do another Q&A, I can just pull those questions up and it'd be real simple. So thank you.
And spread the word. Spread the word that we're doing this. So, tell others.
Yes, absolutely. Please tell your friends about us. Show them this video, show them all of the stuff that we're working on. We're really putting our whole foot into making this just the most exciting and cinematic TTRPG experience possible. We all really care about this, and we're very grateful for the support that you've all already given us. So the Kickstarter link is in the chat. If you haven't backed it, please back it. If you have backed it, grab the link, share it with your friends, maybe get some of them to back it as well. We're really pushing this thing hard, but that's going to be us for today. Thank you again for your time. I'll let you all say your goodbyes.
Take care, everyone. Enjoy gaming.
Not going to get any better than that. So thank you all again. Have a great night. And we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Everyday Heroes. Now on Kickstarter.